The moment I heard my grandson laugh and say, "She's too stupid to realize what's happening," something inside me snapped. I was standing by the window, still holding the phone. He had forgotten to hang up after our call. I hadn't moved. I hadn't made a sound. But every word he said sliced through my chest like a blade. My hands were shaking, but not from weakness. No, from rage. He went on, laughing with his wife in the background. "She still thinks we're struggling. We're literally living in her house for free, and she keeps wiring us money like a dummy." I felt the air go thin. It was my own blood, my grandson, the boy I used to sing lullabies to, the boy who cried when he scraped his knee and always came to me for cookies after school. That same boy had just called me stupid. Before I dive in, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps more people hear stories like this. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just hung up the phone. Then I walked to the drawer where I kept every legal document, every login, every paper connected to the house and the bank account I let him access. He thought I didn't realize what was happening. Oh, but I did. I realized it all, right then. And he had no idea what I was about to do. Let me take you back to how this all started. It was right after my husband died. He left me the house, of course, and a bit of money. Not millions, but enough to live quietly. At first, I didn't know what to do with myself. I spent 42 years of my life married to the same man, and suddenly, it was just me in that big, empty house. That's when James, my grandson, came around more. He was sweet at first, helped me carry groceries, called me almost every day, brought his new wife by to check on me. It felt nice. I thought I still mattered. Then one day, he said, "Grandma, you shouldn't be living alone. You should come stay with us. Or better yet, why don't we move in with you? You'll never be alone again." And I said yes. I was so happy to have family around. I gave them the whole upstairs, cleared it out myself, even told them not to worry about rent. I owned the house outright. They started small, a few extra grocery items on my tab, some emergency money here and there. Then they wanted the spare car. Then they started using my account to pay their credit cards just until they caught up. I kept saying yes, because that's what grandmas do, right? Then came the mortgage. "Grandma, we can refinance the house and take some equity out. You don't need all that space," James told me one afternoon while his wife sat next to him, smiling tightly. I was confused. "But the house is paid off," I said. "That's why it's perfect," he replied. "It's just sitting there doing nothing. You could help us with a down payment on a second place or invest it." I didn't want to say yes, but they pressured me, kept saying it would all be in my name, just a small loan, just to help them get started. I signed. I didn't even realize the paper wasn't for a joint loan. They had somehow transferred ownership. I should have read more, but I trusted them. After that, things changed. They stopped eating dinner with me, stopped talking to me unless they wanted something. One time I asked James for help getting to the doctor. He told me to take a cab. He and his wife had a life too. I remember sitting on my bed that night, staring at the wall, thinking, what happened? How did I go from being the center of my family to being a burden? But I still couldn't accept that he'd truly betrayed me. Not until that call. Not until I heard him laughing. "She won't realize what's happening. She's too old." I froze. I pulled out every document, read through every paper. I didn't sleep that night. I found the mortgage clause, found the hidden accounts. I called the bank. I checked the transfers. And that's when it hit me. They weren't just using me. They were trying to take everything. That house? Legally still mine. But they had filed something, quietly, trying to move it under his wife's name. Probably thought I'd be too old, too tired, too dumb to check. But I wasn't. And I was done. The next morning, I put on my beige coat, the one I wore when I meant business. I walked into the bank branch I'd been with for 35 years, sat down with the manager I knew by name. "I want full control back on this account," I said. "And I want to freeze all secondary access immediately." She asked for ID. I gave it. She made a few clicks on her computer. Done. Then I called my lawyer. I want to undo the mortgage transfer, I said. They manipulated me into signing it under false pretenses. We started the process that day. I didn't tell James. I didn't even hint. I just smiled. He still walked around the house like he owned it, still left dishes in the sink, still rolled his eyes when I asked him to turn the music down at night. He had no idea the storm I was preparing. And then, just a few days later, he found out the hard way. The bank card stopped working. The mortgage payment bounced. The account was frozen. He stormed into my room. "What happened to the account, Grandma? We need that money." I looked him right in the eye. "Oh," I said. "I thought I was too stupid to realize what was happening." He froze. I stood up slowly, walked to my drawer again and held up the documents. "This house is mine. And now, everything else is too." He stared at me like I'd slapped him. His wife came in next, shouting, demanding answers, but I was done talking. I turned my back, walked out of the room and made one final call. "To the locks company, please. Yes, I need all locks changed." And that, dear viewers, was just the beginning. The locksmith arrived just after sunset. I stood by the front door, arms crossed, heart steady. I wasn't scared, not anymore. The fear had burned out the moment I realized how far they'd gone. Now, there was only cold resolve. James and his wife weren't home when the locks were changed. They had gone out, probably to dinner, maybe even with my money again. But this time when they came back, the key wouldn't turn. I heard the rattle of the doorknob followed by pounding. "Grandma, open the door!" I didn't move, just stood in the living room watching them through the peephole. Then came the shouting, "You can't do this! This is illegal!" Illegal? I almost laughed. I had every document. I had every signature, every paper trail. What they had done, that was illegal. The manipulation, the coercion, the forged refinance documents they slipped into my papers when they knew I wasn't paying close attention. I had already contacted a lawyer. I wasn't just fighting back. I was taking everything back. I calmly called the police and explained the situation. "They live here," I said. "But they are no longer tenants. They never paid rent. There's no lease. They don't own the house. I'm the sole owner and I'm evicting them effective immediately under advice of counsel. They've committed financial abuse." "Are they being violent or threatening?" the dispatcher asked. "Not yet," I said, "but I'd feel safer if someone came." The officers showed up within 15 minutes. James was red-faced, his wife clutching her purse like she was ready to fight me in court right there on the lawn. "She's lying," James yelled. "This is elder abuse. You can't just lock your family out of their home." One of the officers asked calmly, "Can you prove residency?" He fumbled. We've been living here for a year." "And do you have a lease? A rental agreement? Any document showing legal tenancy?" Silence. The officer turned to me. "Ma'am, do you have ownership papers?" I handed him the folder I had prepped. Clean, neatly stacked. Copies of the deed, my husband's will, recent bank account statements, the lawyer's email confirming that I still had legal rights to the home. He glanced through them, then nodded. "It's her house. If she doesn't want you here, you'll have to leave." James's wife exploded. "You can't be serious after everything we did for her." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, I suggest you calm down." I didn't say a word, just stood there watching. They were given 10 minutes to collect essential items. James stormed in. His eyes locked on mine like he expected me to crumble, like he thought I'd cry or apologize or beg him to love me again. But I didn't move. He stomped up the stairs, grabbed 2 duffel bags, and slammed drawers like a teenager being grounded. His wife muttered insults under her breath the entire time. Ungrateful, senile, bitter old... I turned to the officer again. "Can I report her language as harassment?" He nodded. "If it continues, yes." 10 minutes later, they were on the sidewalk, with nowhere to go, not a single friend's house they could crash at, not one place that would take them in. Why? Because everything they had came from me. The roof over their head, the food in their fridge, the gas in their car, even the Netflix account they bummed off of. Mine. And now it was gone. But I wasn't done yet. I filed for fraud the next morning. My lawyer submitted a full petition, backed by phone recordings, screenshots of suspicious transfers, and the notarized affidavit of my banker confirming they had accessed funds without permission. Within days, we received a hearing date. James tried to call. Multiple times. I never picked up. His text started soft. "Grandma, can we talk?" "Please don't do this. We're family." Then they turned bitter. "You're ruining our lives. You'll regret this." "No, James. You'll regret underestimating me." That same week, I visited my bank and opened a new account under tighter security. I even met with a digital security consultant who taught me how to lock down my emails, my passwords, and every point of access. No more too stupid to realize what's happening. I was 2 steps ahead now. Then came the moment that made everything worth it. The mortgage reversal was approved. Turns out not only had James and his wife forged some initials, they had also misrepresented my comprehension during the signing. That invalidated the transfer entirely. The court voided the mortgage agreement. The house title was restored 100% to me. Their credit took a hit too for trying to move funds through a senior's property. I framed the court ruling and hung it above the mantel. James showed up at my door one last time. This time alone. No wife, no yelling. Just him, holding a bouquet of wilted flowers, looking like the boy who used to cry for cookies. "Grandma, I messed up," he whispered. "Please, just let me stay for a little while. I don't have anywhere else." I stared at him. The same boy who laughed behind my back. The one who thought I was too old, too slow, too weak to fight back. I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and walked him to the sidewalk. "James," I said softly, "I didn't take my house back to let you back in." He opened his mouth to beg again, but I raised my hand. "This time, you're the one who won't realize what's happening until it's too late." I turned around and walked back into my home. My peaceful, quiet, free home. And as I shut the door, I didn't look back. The silence in the house after James was gone felt like a cool breeze after a long storm. No more loud music thumping through the floor late at night. No more slamming cabinet doors. No more fake smiles or forced hugs. Just quiet. Just peace. I made myself a cup of tea, sat in my favourite chair, and looked around at the home I had built with my late husband. It felt like mine again. It was mine again. But there was still more to clean up, more damage James had left behind. The very next morning, I logged into my online banking and reviewed every transaction from the past year. It was worse than I thought. Thousands gone. Payments to companies I'd never heard of. One even labelled Crypto Fuel FX. Whatever that meant. I gathered everything into a folder and headed straight to the bank again. My banker, Mrs. Patel, looked stunned when she saw the list. "These transfers weren't authorised by you?" she asked. "No," I said. "They were stealing from me. My own grandson." She sighed. "We'll escalate it. There's a fraud team that'll open a formal case." 2 days later, I got a call. "We found evidence of forged online approvals from an unrecognised IP address. It matches the city where your grandson lives." They had stolen not just money, but my trust, my peace of mind, my sense of safety. That's when something else happened. An envelope came in the mail. No stamp, no return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper, handwritten. "You may have the house, but don't forget, we were family. You'll die alone." No name, no signature. But I knew that handwriting. It was James. He'd always had a nervous, crooked way of writing the letter G, like it was trembling. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I took the letter and walked straight to the police station. The officer at the desk took one look and said, "This could be classified as a threat, especially given the previous financial abuse. Would you like to file a restraining order?" I nodded. It was done the same day. James would never be allowed within 100 feet of me again. If he even set foot on my street, he'd be arrested. I should have felt relief, but part of me still hurt. Not because I wanted him back in my life, but because I couldn't believe how little he valued me. I raised that boy. I made his Halloween costumes by hand. I paid for his school books. I took him to the ER when he fell off the trampoline. And this is what I got in return: a plot to rob me blind, then a letter telling me I'd die alone. Well, he was wrong about that too. The next weekend, my neighbour Karen rang the doorbell. She was holding a basket of blueberry muffins and smiling. "I heard James moved out," she said gently. "I just wanted to check on you." I hadn't realised how long it had been since someone came by just to see me, not to use me. We sat on the porch for 2 hours, talked about her garden, the book club I never joined, her 2 golden retrievers that bark at everything. Then she paused and looked at me. "You should come by next Thursday. The girls are meeting at the rec centre for lunch." I hesitated. It had been so long since I let myself be part of anything. But I smiled and nodded. I'd love that. That small moment, just a simple invitation, meant the world. It reminded me that my life wasn't over. I wasn't too old to start again, and I definitely wasn't too stupid to realise what's happening. I was wide awake now. Later that night, I logged into an old hobby site I hadn't visited in years, quilting forums. The old username still worked. I posted a photo of my last finished quilt, and to my surprise, I got over 30 replies from women all over the country. "You're so talented. I wish I could sew like this. Please post more of your work." I spent the next 3 hours replying to them, laughing, sharing tips, reading stories from women my age who had also been mistreated by family, used, betrayed. I wasn't alone. And that was the twist James didn't see coming. He thought once I threw him out, I'd be empty, bitter, defeated. But I was blooming. A few weeks later, I received a formal letter from the court. James had been fined for the forged financial documents. His credit was officially flagged, and the money he had taken, over $47,000, was now listed as a debt owed to me. He'd have to pay it back or face further consequences. I made a copy of that letter and placed it right next to my framed court ruling. Victory wasn't just sweet, it was earned. That weekend, Karen invited me out again, this time to a local art show. As we walked past painted landscapes and sculptures of seashells, I found myself smiling more than I had in years. No tension, no fear, no walking on eggshells in my own home. And as I looked around at the happy faces, the soft music, the slow dance of strangers enjoying a Saturday morning, I thought to myself, this is what real life feels like. Not the life I had while James was under my roof, stealing in silence and laughing at my back. But a life where I finally stood tall, said no, and chose me. And that choice, choosing myself, was just the beginning. Because I had one more surprise for James, something he really wouldn't see coming. It started with a visit to my lawyer's office. Mr. Elliot had been handling my affairs ever since my husband passed. He was kind, sharp, and never once treated me like I was just some old lady. That morning, I walked into his office with a plan, one I'd been quietly crafting ever since I froze James's account and took back the house. He leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "You're sure you want to do this, Evelyn?" I nodded. "I'm not just cleaning up the past, I'm securing my future." He gave a slow, approving smile. "Then let's make it official." We started drafting a new will, one with very specific changes. James and his wife, removed entirely. Not a cent, not even a photo. In their place, I added the local women's shelter, the animal rescue centre I used to volunteer at, and a scholarship fund for young single mothers returning to school. I wasn't just erasing the damage they caused, I was planting something new in its place. "Do you want to notify James about the will update?" Mr. Elliot asked. I gave a small smirk. "Oh, I want him to find out, but not from me. Let him learn the hard way, the same way I did." We signed the papers, and just like that, the house, my assets, and every single dime were now fully out of his reach. Forever. But I wasn't finished. You see, James had always bragged about starting his own online business, some shady dropshipping scheme mostly built with money I had given him under the impression it was for bills or emergencies. He used my address for that business registration. That gave me an opportunity. I contacted a financial auditor who specialized in fraud investigations and business tax compliance. I sent her every record, every suspicious transaction I had uncovered. Within days, she called me back with a serious tone. "Ma'am, this business of your grandson's has dozens of unreported income streams. He hasn't paid proper taxes in years." "What happens next?" I asked. "We'll be forwarding this to the IRS fraud department. He might be in more trouble than he realizes." A week later, I got another envelope, this time from the state tax office. Inside was confirmation that an investigation had been opened. It wasn't just about getting my money back anymore. It was about teaching him that actions have consequences, especially when you underestimate someone just because they're older. I never told James what I did, but I knew he'd feel it soon enough. Later that week, I was outside watering my roses when Karen walked over. She had a look on her face like she was trying not to grin. "Guess who I saw at the pharmacy?" she said. "Who?" "Your grandson, arguing with the clerk about his debit card getting declined." I laughed. A real laugh, loud and full. I hadn't laughed like that in months. Karen laughed too. He looked so flustered. I almost felt bad for him. "Almost," I said, shaking my head. And then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in a long time. A letter from my husband, written shortly before he died. I kept it tucked away in an old jewellery box in the closet. That night I pulled it out, unfolded the creased paper, and read, his neat handwriting again. "Evelyn, if you're reading this, then you're the strong one who's still standing. Don't ever let anyone take advantage of your kindness. You have a fire in you. Use it." Tears welled up in my eyes, but they didn't fall, because I wasn't crying from sadness. I was crying because for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. Strong, clear-headed, brave. The next day, I returned to the community centre with a batch of muffins. Karen waved me over to her table, and soon I was sitting with 5 women I'd only ever waved at in passing. We talked, we laughed. They listened to my story, not all the dark details, just enough for them to understand I'd been through something. One of them, Cheryl, reached over and touched my arm. "You're an inspiration, Evelyn." I swallowed the lump in my throat. For years, I thought I had nothing left to give, that I was just taking up space in a house that no longer felt like home. Now I was showing women it's never too late to stand up, fight back, and take control. But the world had one more surprise for me. 2 days later, I got a knock at the door. It wasn't James. It was a woman, mid-30s, nervous expression, holding a file folder. "Hi. Are you Evelyn Monroe?" "I am. I'm Melanie. I don't know how to say this, but I used to work with your grandson. I saw what he did to you, and I have information." I let her in, offered her tea, and listened as she opened the folder. Inside were screenshots, spreadsheets, bank logs, proof that James had been scamming not just me, but multiple elderly women through consulting websites, fake crowdfunding pages, and credit card skimming apps. He had done this before. He was doing it again. But now he'd messed with the wrong grandma. I looked up at her and said, "Would you be willing to give a statement to the authorities?" She nodded, fierce now. "Yes, I'm tired of being silent." So was I. I sat across from Melanie at my kitchen table, the early evening light spilling through the lace curtains. The same light that used to feel so hollow now warmed the room with purpose. Melanie's hands were shaking slightly as she opened more files. I was working as James's assistant, unofficially. He didn't want to pay taxes for an employee, so he paid me under the table. She glanced at me. "He said you were rich and clueless, that you'd never notice." I said nothing, just nodded and let her keep talking. He bragged about using old women's stories to create fake GoFundMe pages. He'd invent entire sob stories, put your photo next to them without you knowing, then transfer the donations into crypto wallets. I blinked. My photo? She turned the screen of her laptop around. There it was, a page titled, "Help Nana Evelyn Save Her Home." The photo showed me from 2 years ago, standing in front of the porch with a basket of tomatoes. Underneath, a description written in fake tears. "My dear grandma is about to lose her house after a series of health emergencies. Please, help us keep her safe." Raised. $14,870 goal. $15,000 status. Closed. Thank you for helping. I covered my mouth. He used my face to scam strangers? Melanie nodded, eyes heavy with guilt. That's why I'm here. I was part of it. Not by choice, but I stayed quiet. Too long. I'm ready to help now. And she did. Together we prepared a full report. Screenshots, voice memos, bank trail, timestamps, and more. Melanie submitted her own signed affidavit, confirming James's involvement in multiple counts of financial fraud, elder abuse, and wire scams. By the end of the week, I had handed everything to the state fraud investigator. The man who took the report, a tall man with tired eyes and a quiet voice, flipped through the documents and looked up at me. "This is airtight. He won't talk his way out of this." I should have felt vindicated, but I felt calm. Like I had finally finished closing the door on something that had rotted from the inside out. Still, the storm wasn't quite over. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. James had been arrested. Fraud, identity theft, wire transfer abuse. But the part that struck me hardest, bail denied. He had no one to co-sign, no one who trusted him enough to stand for him in court. He was exactly where he belonged, stuck in a cold cell, finally realizing that he didn't see what was happening. The boy who once laughed and said, "She's too stupid to realize," had underestimated the one thing he never saw coming, my strength. I didn't throw a party. I didn't post online. I didn't dance around the house like in some movie. I just walked out onto the porch, wrapped myself in a shawl, and stared up at the stars. That night I whispered a thank you to my late husband. "I did it, George," I said softly. "I protected what we built." But this story isn't just about punishment, it's about rebirth. With James out of my life, a strange kind of lightness filled my days. I painted the living. Room for the first time in a decade. Soft sage green, peaceful, clean. I adopted a cat named Winston from the shelter. He's fat, grumpy, and has a missing ear, but he purrs like a truck engine when he naps on my chest. I love that silly thing. Karen and I started taking evening walks. I joined the quilting group again, this time teaching 3 younger women how to stitch heirloom patterns. We laugh, we gossip, we live. I even got invited to speak at the local women's centre. Me, a guest speaker. The director called me one day, her voice full of excitement. "Evelyn, we heard your story from the fraud department. You're incredible. Would you consider sharing your experience with some of our seniors?" I hesitated. "You think people want to hear from someone like me?" "We need them to," she said. So I went. That day, I stood in a quiet room looking out at rows of silver hair and tired eyes. I saw myself in them. I told them everything, from the innocent little favours James asked for, to the fake documents, the stolen money, the betrayal, and the revenge. When I finished, no one clapped. They just sat in stunned silence. Then one woman stood up, her eyes glassy with tears. "I gave my grandson my credit card. He said it was just for books. Now I'm in debt." Another whispered, "I thought I was the only one." I reached across the podium and said, "You are never the only one." That moment mattered more than every legal win, every frozen account. That was healing. As months passed, I started receiving small handwritten letters in the mail. Some from women in my quilting group, some from the women's centre, one from a girl in college who'd read about my story online. They all said the same thing in different words. "You gave me courage." But nothing prepared me for the last letter that came. It was from James. I almost didn't open it, but something in me said I should. Not to forgive him, not to reconnect, just to know. Inside, a short message. Grandma, I don't expect you to write back. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I finally see it now. What I did. I thought I was smart. I thought I was in control. But I was just broken. I used your kindness like a weapon. And I didn't even say thank you. You taught me a lesson I'll never forget. I'm sorry. James. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't write back. But I did feel something shift. Forgiveness is a funny thing. It doesn't always come wrapped in hugs and smiles. Sometimes it's quiet, a breath, a decision to not carry the weight any longer. I forgave him. Not for him, but for me. Because I didn't want the rest of my life tied to the worst part of it. I wanted joy. I wanted freedom. I wanted peace. And now, I had it. 6 months later, I hosted a garden party, not for a birthday, not for a holiday, just because the flowers were blooming and the sun felt good. Karen brought iced tea. Cheryl brought her famous peach cobbler. Even Melanie showed up, with her new job, a new haircut, and a new smile. We sat around my garden table, laughing about nothing, sharing stories, and soaking in a peace none of us had to fake. Winston swatted at a butterfly and tumbled into the bush. We howled with laughter. It was the kind of day I thought I'd never get back. But I did, because I took it back. My house, my dignity, my life. And as the sun dipped below the trees and the sky turned pink, I stood in the middle of that small group of women and raised my glass. To all the people who underestimated us, I said, they raised theirs too. To us. And just like that, I realized something. He was right about one thing. I didn't realize what was happening. But now I do. And I'll never let it happen again.